Hi, and welcome back to another episode of ADK Talks. I'm Jane, and I'm joined by my brother Steve. Say hi, Steve.
Hi, Steve.
And, listener, today it's actually above 60 degrees in the Adirondacks. The first time since fall, and we can see summer on the horizon. So I'm really excited today.
You really on the horizon?
Well, you never know.
It might be.
It might be. But today I'm really excited to have back a guest actually two guests that make summer extra special here in the Adirondacks. For more than a century on the shores of Schroon Lake, young artists have arrived with big voices and even bigger dreams, and they've left transformed. Seagle Festival is not only the oldest summer vocal training program in the United States, it's widely considered to be one of the best. And now, as tickets for the 2026 season go on sale this week, rather individual tickets go on sale this week, Seagle isn't just preparing for another summer of extraordinary performances, it's imagining a future that could reshape arts and culture in the Adirondacks year-round. Today, we're joined by returning guest Darren Woods, who is Seagle's Artistic Director, and for the first time in ADK Talks history, Director of Education and Community Outreach, Josh Cook, joins us as well. Welcome to ADK Talks, gentlemen.
Welcome.
Thanks. It's great to be back, Jane.
I'm so excited to talk about the new works you guys are debuting this year, children's programming, hearing about your experience in audition season, your capital campaign, and, hearing more about what it takes to build a thriving arts ecosystem in the Adirondacks. Darren, let's just sort of start with the basics. For our listeners who may be new to Seagle or need a refresher, just give us the quick origin story. And what is the Seagle Festival and why does it matter in 2026?
It started in 1915 with Oscar Seagle. It was a renowned voice teacher and baritone. We started out in 1915 not doing performances. He was just a voice teacher. And so it was really hot in New York City and there was no air conditioning. So his students sort of matriculated up to the Adirondacks, first in The Hague for a couple of years. And then a nice little tidbit, the Brown Swan was built in 1917. And for 2 years, singers were at the Brown Swan, which is now the lodge at Schroon Lake. Then they realized that singing at 8 o'clock in the morning at a resort was probably not the best idea. So about that time, Oscar got a $90,000 royalties from Columbia Records for Dear O Pal of Mine, a record that he made. And they bought the two farms up on Charlie Hill Road that we occupy today. We now do 2 book musicals, 2 operas, a children's opera that tours, a review, and all sorts of things. So it's grown immensely over the last 111 years. It was run exclusively by the family until I came along and Tony, and in 1996. So 31 years we've been at it up here in the Adirondacks, the team that we have now.
That's amazing. And you actually both you and Josh were performers at one point with Seagle, correct?
Yeah, I was a singer here in 1980. So do the math, that was 46 years ago. And I was only here 1 year, but it was obviously got in my blood and we supported it. And in 1996, Mrs. Seagle, Dodie Seagle, called me and said, "Do you know anybody who might want to be the artistic director?" And I said, "Yeah, me." And I've been thinking about transitioning from singing into management. I thought, well, this would be the perfect time to learn what it is on my feet and still keep my singing career. So for 4 years, I did both. And then in 1999, I retired from the stage and went to just running opera companies. But Seagle has been in my life since I was a lad of 22.
That's amazing. You've said before how rigorous it is at Seagle, and that you take 32 artists from hundreds of applicants each summer, and you just spent the early part of 2026 on the road auditioning. Where did you go, and what does that process look like?
The process is everybody has to submit a video of at least 2 arias. If they want a live audition, they can submit 1 aria, but if they want to be heard, we still take people via video only. So we do both. So we listen to every one of those applicants, 400 this year. We went to Philly, New York City, Boston, Chicago, and Houston. And we hear about half of them on the road live. And I really love hearing them live. You just like being in the room. The ones we are considering from video, we then schedule a video interview with them. So We can interact with them a little bit like we did the people on the road. And then we have the real arduous task of narrowing that 400 people down to 32. It is difficult. Our second bench and our third bench are generally as good as the first bench. And so it's a matter of splitting hairs. And it's really difficult to tell somebody who's really, really spectacular that you don't have a spot for them. We try to hold our spots for our second year and third year artists who might want to come back. So sometimes, even though we take 32, there might only be 15 spots really. This year, because a lot of our singers got real jobs that pay, we're preparing them for that. We only have 7 that are returning. So a lot of newbies are going to be there this year. We're super excited about that.
That's amazing.
One thing that people ask me a lot about auditions is, how do you know? Like, you're listening to 60 people, 100 people. I always say, we're not looking for good. We're looking for extraordinary. And if you've ever seen the movie Alien, I'm looking for that monster inside that is just dying to get out, that just has to say something. And so there are a lot of good voices. There's a lot of good actors, but that's something that just in that person, that if they don't sing and they don't perform and they don't get it out, they would rather not breathe than not be able to do what they're doing. That's extraordinary.
That thing that just explodes out of their chest.
Exactly.
Grabs you by the throat and say, this is who I need.
That is it. That is it.
Okay.
Not to get us off on a tangent, but when you were describing the audition process, I was thinking not about Alien, but the Netflix show America's Sweethearts about women auditioning to be Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders. Yours sounds even more rigorous, so that's amazing.
It is very rigorous, but it's very fun. And again, it's training them for what they're going to have to do for the rest of their lives. They are going to audition for every single job that they have. And this is just that first step on what we hope is going to be a long career.
I also want to just really emphasize the point that these are people in several years down the line you could see in a Broadway show, you could see at the Met Opera, you could see at other, operas, and I'm not that familiar with, I know Houston has an opera, but these are the rising stars of musical performers.
Absolutely. In fact, the new Masquerade that's just off Broadway, the new Andrew Lloyd Webber Masquerade, the 2 of the leading ladies are our alumni, Erin LaCroix and Francesca Narotra.
Oh, wow.
We have debut artists at the Met this year. We have singers in Berlin. We have a lot of singers in Berlin these days. And in Marseille, we have them in all over Germany. We can really say that there's virtually not an opera house in the United States or Europe that at some point doesn't have a Seagle Festival alumni.
That's amazing.
Every year.
Let's talk about the 2026 season. What are your headline productions and what makes this lineup so exciting?
Well, like I said, we try to do 2 musicals and 2 operas. And so this year we're doing an operetta, a standard opera, a new American opera, which we always do, and I'll talk about that later. And then we're doing a big book musical that's a perennial favorite. Last year, Pirates of Penzance was so well received and people loved that we were doing Gilbert and Sullivan again. We decided, well, why not go back to the beginning? So we're doing HMS Pinafore, which was the operetta they wrote before they wrote The Pirates of Penzance. So it's all that zany British comedy with the beautiful Gilbert and Sullivan music. We're doing Mozart's Così fan tutte in Italian, but don't be afraid, listener. We have translated super titles above the stage, so you can read along in English if you want to do that. The last thing we're doing, I'll talk about that first, is The Sound of Music. We haven't done it in 23 years, I think. And I'm telling you, everybody that calls, that's all they want to talk about is The Sound of Music. So on April 1st, when those tickets go on sale, we've even added a 5th performance already because we know that is going to sell out super fast. The one thing I'm the most excited about, because I am the American opera guru, they call me the grandfather of the great American opera, is Dead Man Walking by Jake Heggie and Terrence McNally. It's one of the last librettos that Terrence McNally worked on, the great playwright, before he died. It follows the story of Sister Helen Prejean, like the novel and the movie, listener, with Susan Sarandon and Sean Penn. It is one of the most gripping, as you would imagine, beautiful operas, beautiful music, but really a very, very intense look at the death penalty. And I'll tell you a little anecdote. When I was in Fort Worth, we produced this, and I told my congresswoman, Kay Granger, about it. I kept talking about it for years. And so when we did a matinee in Fort Worth, I knew she was in Washington, but I saw her in the lobby, and I said, you came. And she said, you've been talking about it. I flew down this morning. I want to see the opera and I'm going to go back. I think I met 2 years later. She said, I'm still a death penalty advocate, but I think about that opera every day. And I said, opera we want you to think, whatever side you're coming down on any issue, I want you to leave the theater with things on your mind that you want to discuss with your friends and to just think about.
Wow, that's incredible. Josh, one of the most exciting expansions has been the children's programming that Darren just mentioned. Tell us about what families can expect in 2026.
Yeah, now that I'm up here full time, this will be my third full season up here. And part of what we've been asking ourselves since I got up here is how can we continue to connect with our community and grow what we do, even 111 seasons into what we do. And one of those things, I used to be a managing director for a youth choir, and this sort of audience engagement, whether you're young or old, you're here to learn, you're here to grow. And that's part of what we've really started to do with this program. And so it's as much about teaching people about healthy snacks when we're running around on stage and being a part of that as it is learning what it means to put on a show and be a part of that. And so with our youth program, this year we're really excited. There's 2 shows that get to involve kids. Dead Man Walking has a few younger singers in it during the first act. And then, of course, The Sound of Music has the Von Trapp family children. So we're really excited. We're going to have about 8 artists in each show. So about 16 kids altogether. And we'll work with them starting a little bit after Mother's Day to get them on their feet, to talk about the social and emotional components that go with being on stage and what it means to create a character, but also do, the nuts and bolts of here are notes, here are rhythms, let's learn how to create a song together. And then we'll, of course, send them home with the Sound of Music movie to watch and listen to all these soundtracks. But the most exciting piece is when we get to bring them up to what we call the Hill, the Seagle Festival campus. And all of these young, mostly full-time residents here in the Adirondacks get to meet these amazing emerging artists that we have here at Seagle Festival and learn not only how they work behind the stage, but also on the stage, and learn what it takes, and that a career in the arts is much more vibrant than just singing songs. It's dealing with people, it's making stories, it's connecting these memories. And I know Darren and I both have memories from being that age and getting on our feet and having that kind of musical experience. So to me, it's been very, very near and dear to my heart to be able to continue to expand what we do and be able to work with a lot more of the amazing students we have here in the North Country.
That's an amazing opportunity to give those kids exposure. I mean, it would be amazing if it were a program, in Albany or Boston or Buffalo, New York City, but that it's happening here and young members of our community can participate. That's incredible.
And we still tour our children's opera all over festivals and stuff in the summer, but we go to 25 schools in between September and October. And then Josh has already started an adult education thing called From the Page to Stage. So he's really taken this idea of broadening the education programs and just running with it.
And what's been really great too, these From Page to Stage series, we've been going to 3 local libraries. I call it my Northway Library Tour. It's been a lot of fun. We go up to Westport, here in Schroon Lake, and then down to the Lake George area. And just away in the winter where moving up here full time, it was amazing to see how alive everything is through the North Country. And I wanted to help be a part of that. And we've had amazing groups. We've done 2 of the 4 shows so far. And between the first and second presentation, we almost doubled the size in each space. So people are excited to hear what we're doing. They're excited to learn everything they don't see on the stage. And so, they get to leave understanding the history of a piece or how it was created and its life from its premiere to today.
That's awesome. You also have children-specific performances in the summer. Is that correct?
Yes. So like Darren mentioned, we tour all throughout the North Country, both for usually the month of July in the summer. And then as soon as our season ends, we get ready and we have a different cast, but for the same show. This year, it's Seymour Barrett's Little Red Riding Hood.
Oh, fun.
Which is a fantastic piece. And we're going to work with those artists. So as soon as our season's done, we prepare them and then they hit the road. And like Darren mentioned, they'll travel all the way up to the northern border and all throughout the park and just a little south of the Blue Line, but really trying to connect with as many younger students as possible. And for a lot of people, this is their first experience with live performance and live music like this, especially classical music. So we're very excited to be able to get into these schools and work with the teachers and local BOCES to help make that happen.
I love also, Darren, I know something that you're a big advocate for are what I think you call them opera shots. They're like opera pop-ups around the Adirondacks. Can you talk a little bit about that?
We started doing these in Fort Worth, and they became really popular. They're getting really popular up here too. And basically, we go into a bar or to a restaurant, and we sing for 2 hours. We'll do like 4 20-minute sets. We'll give away some swag or maybe a couple of tickets. But it's a really good way for people who think they might not want to devote 3 hours to going to an opera, to go and have a drink and taste it. And if they don't like it, they can leave. Most of the time, people stay for the whole time. But we don't do just opera. We do music theater songs, and we do opera arias and duets. This year, you can look for us, and I'll give you the exact dates when they're settled so you can put on the website. I know we're going to go to New Vita Preserve, which you turned me on to on the podcast because I listen to that when I do my walk every day. They are charming up there. We'll probably go back to the Deerhead Inn in Elizabethtown. We'll be somewhere in Ticonderoga to be named. And we're looking at maybe going to the new brewery in Warrensburg. We've not been there yet. And we'll find some place in the Glens Falls, Queensbury area. So it's the week before we actually start. So I think the first one at New Vita is on the 12th of June. And we'll go all the way through the next Saturday. And then Sunday, everybody gets here and we're off to the races. But it's a really good way to just sort of try it. There's no charge. You just come. I mean, I'm sure they're going to want you to pay for your drink or your pizza, but we don't charge you anything. You just can come and listen to the music, talk to the singers. We'll have, our schedule there. It's just we call them friend raisers.
Oh, that's great. That backdrop of Whiteface Mountain that New Vita overlooks, it's going to be very dramatic.
It's spectacular.
Yeah. How do you think that because listener, we've talked about this before, there's sort of the main building where their restaurant is an enormous A-frame. What would the acoustics be like in there? Would that be okay?
Yeah, actually, it's so good. I don't think we're going to even need to take our sound system. We'll probably take it with us, but the general manager and I were listening and singing and sort of, I don't think we'll have to. And I also think, this is an exact reason why this podcast is so important. I would have never known that was there. And there's so many things that you guys bring to even us that live up here. But it's such a great service that now, I'm going to go to dinner there as soon as it's, gets a little bit lighter in the evening. It's just a spectacular place. And now that they're excited about having us, and it's a whole new venue, a whole new audience. We're just a little bit closer to Lake Placid. And we're really excited about going.
That's awesome. Oh, I'm so excited. I'm so excited we could connect the dots for you all. So that's great. Josh, you first came to Seagle as an emerging artist in 2016 and 2017. Now you're Director of Education and Outreach. What has that journey been like for you? What has that meant to you?
Long, but wonderful. When I think back, I still remember my audition. It was winter. We were at Opera America in New York City. I went in. I had kind of a tricky piano piece, and I remember it was not quite everything I had planned hearing at the piano, but I smiled, I sang, I had my role ready to go, and I sang a second piece, and Darren looked up and said, "That was beautiful, that was musical, go home and hug your voice teacher for me." And I went, "I think I did okay, I hope I did okay." And I remember getting the call to come up here to Seagle, and knowing the history, I had a graduate student ahead of me. I was in my undergraduate program at Ohio State, and she had been here the 2 years before and had told me all about it. And she said, "It will change your life. You won't even understand how it will change your life until you're there." And boy, did I find out. And I would, wake up every morning and go for a walk with Darren and some of the voice teachers and directors. And I'm a bit of a nerd, and I love to read and learn as much as I can about why we do the things that we do. And Darren was more than gracious in giving me every answer to every question I had for him. He and Tony, my bosses now, both became close mentors, and they stayed close to me as I transitioned from being a singer to being more of a director. And when this role opened up, I had been sort of traveling the nonprofit circuit through COVID, which was an interesting experience in a lot of ways. But I always knew that my heart was here in opera and it really was here in the Adirondacks. I fell in love with Rooster Combe as my first hike up here, and I knew I always wanted to find a way back here. And so when this role opened up about 2 years ago, Darren gave me a little nudge and said, you should really apply. I really think this could be a great role for you. And it's been an amazing 3 seasons so far.
You know, I was looking at your bio and sort of prepping for this interview, and I was really interested. You have a very diverse background, like you just mentioned, in the federal grant systems, UNESCO programming, historic sites, youth choirs. How does that experience fitting in with what you do today at Seagle?
To me, my life's always been, I've always been the cork, a cork in a boat to help keep things afloat. I'm a middle child of 3 boys. And when I think of all the different roles that I've had, it's always been about people. It's about how do I connect with people and how do I help organize the amazing ideas that we have. In nonprofit, one of the toughest things is taking everyone's passion and finding a way to make it be effective, or also to make it really clear that not only do we love the arts, but here's how we make the arts happen. And so I feel like a lot of my role these last 3 seasons has been not only learning everything that Tony and Darren have put into Seagle Festival, but how we can continue to expand upon that as we move forward and we're able to grow not only our full-time staff, but grow our opportunities for our local community, both in the summer and throughout the year. And so I've been able to just sort of ask questions, and once in a while they'll look at me and go, we haven't thought about that before. And it just sparks that new idea and that new way for us to continue to keep the mission that we have, but make it a little more current for today's audience and how we are in the North Country.
It's nice to have somebody who's in their early 30s to tell us, people that have been doing it for 31 years old, maybe there might be a different way to do this.
That's great.
Maybe we don't have to do it the same way.
It's such a good point about why volunteers also are so important to these organizations. When I moved up here, my mother is a member of the Friends of the Library at our local library, and she said, they're looking for volunteers. Why don't you do that? And I have not only met some great new people, but, for somebody who has a background in financial services marketing, I'm always so pleased that things that I've learned from my past experience can apply to them, whether it's helping them with their social media or promoting their events. So I would just say to listeners, if you love something, don't worry about whether or not you're an expert in it. If you can, look for volunteer opportunities because they can add so much to these organizations here. Speaking of that, Josh, you serve on the Essex County Arts Council and the Adirondack Land Trust Next Generation Council. Why does arts programming matter so much in a rural region like the Adirondacks?
To me, part of when I moved up here, I had told Darren that I really wanted to look at nonprofit as this kind of full circle idea. And so my job is working for a nonprofit. And through the Arts Council and through the Next Generation Council, I get to kind of have the feeling of sitting on a board and feeling like a board member. And I also have the feeling of being a grantor and seeing how our money distributes through the Arts Council into the county. And so it lets me have perspective in a way that I feel like also gives me a little bit more understanding of how our communities work. And so by seeing that, I'm able to see just how present the arts are in all of our lives around here, whether it's through going to the Adirondack Folk Music Festival that happens here in Schroon Lake, or going to an amazing art exhibition up in Ossipple Forks or out in Lake Placid, Saranac Lake area, but getting to have that exciting feeling to realize there is so much art being made here and not enough people know where to find it. And that's that piece is everyone that I've met everywhere we've gone. I play piano at the local community church here, as well as sing around town for any events that we need in the off season. And it's amazing to talk to our local audience and hear their experiences with music and how much they wish they could see more of it. And so my excitement as we're here is that there's an audience for what we do throughout the year, and finding that way to connect with them is what keeps me going and what enlivens the nature around us. You know, we live in such a beautiful place. When I think of the arts, it's that piece that I love. It's that piece that keeps my life going, and it's all the more beautiful here.
You know, I think this is a great time to let listeners know where they can get more information about you.
Really?
Steve, I beat you to the punch.
Yeah, Steve.
I was getting ready. I'm chomping at the
I
bit.
could see you muted it.
Like everything else in this programming, she just goes right ahead and takes it away from me.
Our website is seaglefestival.org, and people often misspell Seagle. It's SEAGLE, festival.org. Everything's on there. And actually, we just put, I think, all the singers that are coming and their headshots and their bios, and so you can look at them and see where they're coming from and what they're doing. And you can buy tickets right there. You can also make a donation if you so choose. But it's all set up for this season. And again, you can buy season tickets now. You can't buy single tickets until April 1st. So again, if you want to hear the sound of music and those local kids singing, those Von Trapp children, you get them on that first.
You guys have a presence on Facebook and Instagram. Sometimes I find up here the most up-to-date information or news is in social media.
We do, on both.
Awesome. Well, speaking of how you are supported, Seagle is in the early stages of a capital campaign. Tell us what the vision is.
Oh, man, this is so exciting. We are, as many of you who've been up there know, all of our facilities are not winterized. And so come the first frost, we have to unplug all the water. All the water system is on top of the ground. It's a lovely plumbing system that was probably put together in the 1930s that we still use. But a lot of our buildings have outlived they've aged out of use. And one of them is one of the residences. So we need to replace that. And then as we started dreaming, our board said, we've always dreamt of a brand new theater, a brand new dining hall event space, maybe offices in there, and then 2 new 8-bedroom housing units. So we just we thought this felt like the time was right. What's beautiful about this, and it plays into what Josh was saying, when these buildings are all built, they will all completely be winterized. We will be able to perform 12 months a year. And my big dream is several-fold, I'm passionate about our education system. Imagine we see 7,000 kids when we just do the summer and 8 weeks or 7 weeks in the fall. Imagine if we could have young artists from September through the end of May. How many more children we could see. We could have high school programs. We could have middle school programs. We would have singers that could go spend week-long residencies, perhaps, in a rural school instead of just dropping. I mean, what we do is great, but would it be great to drop in more than once a year to some of these rural schools? We have a dream of bringing our alumni back and doing a fall opera and a holiday opera and a spring opera for the people that are here in the beautiful new winterized 250-seat theater. We can host, voting in our dining hall. We can host community events. We can host chamber meetings. There's so many things that we could do when we're not performing in that theater. We're talking to other arts organizations about presenting some of their stuff here. So we don't have to drive to Albany. We don't have to drive to Glens Falls. We can have it right here. We've only just begun to start dreaming about the endless possibilities that these facilities will give us. Mostly, and again, that's why, bringing Josh on and promoting him this last year is looking at the educational possibilities. We really needed somebody who was really going to focus on that. And as he said, we're already seeing people that want something full-time here. We did a Christmas concert just on a lark this year, and we did a holiday concert at the church as a benefit for the food bank. They had to open up the second room. It was standing room only, and their people were so happy. And as everything in the Adirondacks, I looked at Tony and said, okay, we have to do this for the rest of our lives, because if you do it once and it's successful, it's tradition. But we're also doing off-season programming. In April, we're having one of our alumni come back, Scott Hetz-Clark, who sings with big bands down in the Washington area. He's going to do a show called I Left My Heart in Schroon Lake, and it's going to be all sort of, Frank Sinatra and that big band stuff. It's going to be at the lodge at Schroon Lake, and we're setting it up cabaret styles with tables, and you can go get a drink and come in. We're planning another holiday concert. We're partnering with Glimmerglass and Opera Saratoga to present Kurt Weill's Happy End in May. It's touring all around, but we are co-producers of that. So we're already trying to build that fall and spring and holiday audience 3 years before we hope to open the theater. But it's just an exciting time. And who doesn't love to dream about the possibilities of something extraordinary? And it will be not only for us, certainly, but it will be transformational for not just Schroon Lake, but for the area. It will be nothing like this exists anywhere in the North Country to this extent.
Yeah, year round. No, you're absolutely right. And I love the full circle of where Oscar Seagle first got exposed to this area when he was staying at the Brown Swan. You're now going to be performing at the lodge at Schroon Lake, which is the former Brown Swan. So that's really...
Yeah, in fact, the restaurant's called the Brown Swan, and we're going to be in the sort of a little cabaret area off to the side of the restaurant. So it is full circle. It's very cool.
You know, what would you say to somebody, you know, when I listen to all the things you're rattling off about the winterizing and the expanded theater, and I have to imagine adding air conditioning too for the summer.
Yes.
What would you say to somebody listening who's hearing all this great stuff and saying, that sounds really ambitious? Why is now the right time for you guys to do that?
It just felt like the right time. You know, we had been dreaming about this, and as part of the strategic plan, I think we really started talking about it in 2012, 2013. And we, at the 100th anniversary, started a Renaissance campaign, and we raised a goodly amount of money. And then COVID came and the world shut down. We now have so many more people. The bonus for COVID, so many more people are living here year round. There are younger people who are on our board. There are people who have means and people who know people who have means. We also have been exploring a lot of federal and state grants that can help us with this. And also a couple of things happen. Two of our biggest competitors, one of them is in Arkansas, and the Walton Foundation just called them and said, hi, would you like a lot of millions of dollars to build a new theater? And so they opened a brand new theater last year with brand new housing units and brand new everything. And our other competitor is my good friend, runs Brevard Music Center in North Carolina, and they moved from a hot outdoor amphitheater where they can only do one performance because it's seated 3,000 people into the Brevard University. So they have a new theater. They've got a black box. They've got air-conditioned dorms. Everything's climate controlled. We still get the pick of the litter when it comes to singers, but our facilities no longer match the talent that we are getting. And Adirondack charm goes a long way until it's 100 degrees in those buildings.
I just want to make a little footnote there for listeners who may not equate what organization the Waltons are part of. The Waltons are Walmart.
Yes.
So, you know, that's big support there. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was up in the Ozarks. And, and I congratulated the general director, and she said, I didn't even make a call. They called me. And I was like, boy, that's like winning the lottery.
Yes, seriously. Yeah. Without buying a ticket. So that's awesome.
Without buying a ticket. Surprise, here's $60 million.
I think one of the things you also said just really resonated with me and probably Steve too. We have conversations with lots of different people. And one of the biggest struggles is sort of the shoulder season or the quote unquote off season. You know, if there's not a lot of snow and it doesn't get cold in winter, that impacts the Lake George Winter Carnival, the Saranac Lake Winter Carnival, the ski resorts. And so it's really important that we create other things for people to do here during those seasons, not just to enrich the local community, but also the local economy too. And, you know, if you're going to the, you know, Seagle Festival, you can, for a matinee or an evening performance, you can have dinner in town in Schroon Lake or go for coffee afterwards or a drink. And it really, you know, this was a big part of our conversation with Indian Lake Theater, which is a not-for-profit movie theater in the town of Indian Lake. She talked a lot about how it's become a hub in their town. And, you know, they buy all their supplies from Pine's Country Store. So I think there's so many, it's sort of like a ripple effect through the town for having these things here in the off season.
Absolutely. And we want that. We want the community to see this. In fact, our campaign is called A Home of Your Own.
Oh, nice.
Not our own, because we really want the community to see this as a place where they can gather, that it's meant for the community.
You know, if someone has never been to Seagle before, describe, you know, what the feeling of a summer evening performance is like. And, I'm not going to ask you to do it in one sentence because that might be a little hard, but how would you sum that up?
We are all about a transformational experience, transformative experience. We want the audience to come. We're going to greet you at the door as we're standing right there at the door. There's always a pre-show lecture if you want to go learn something about the show beforehand to sort of help you along. But we want you to sit in that chair and listen to these stars of tomorrow who are pouring their heart out just for you. And I want you to feel like you are the only human being in that audience and they are singing just for you. And when you come out and look at the beautiful starry sky night, you realize that everything is just perfect, that you have had a transformational experience.
And even from looking back at like the singer perspective, and being up here full time, there's such a sense of energy and anticipation because for almost every artist, this is sometimes the first time they've ever done a foreign language opera role or that they've been in a leading role. And you'll feel that kind of energy and that excitement. And for us, it's really fun because we get to watch it through the rehearsal process and see how they grow. But for those audiences, it's really fun. They'll usually find one of us right at the ticket booth, taking their tickets and saying hello to them. And it's been really fun. There's a few patrons that always giggle that I remember their name. And I go, you're coming into our home. It's important to me that we know who you are. And that's part of the Seagle charm. That's something that's always been present here well before me and honestly well before all of us. It's always been about creating that third space for people to be a part of and make a part of their summertime. And so, I remember as a singer, the best part is at the end, your patrons come and say hello to you. We don't necessarily have a stage door, but we have a beautiful grass area right.
They wait in the yard.
And, they'll bring cookies, they'll give you a hug, these people that you really get to know. We tell all the artists that you are already local celebrities when they get here the first day, and they sort of chuckle. They don't know what that means yet. And then they come into town to Stewart's to get ice cream and maybe to get some coffee. And people will stop them on the street and go, can't wait to see you tonight. And they have no idea who they are. And that sense of community and family that we're able to celebrate here in Schroon Lake and with Seagle Festival is it's one of my favorite pieces, both as an artist and now as a member of the staff.
I did want to tell everybody too, I forgot to mention this, that for the last few years, we've had, some weather challenges with electricity going off and having to cancel performances and sending people home. 15 minutes into Carmen, we had to cancel the performance and do it again the next day. We have a generator. So if you have been here and you're worried about that, the lights will come right back on. So don't worry.
For people who may not know, the Seagle campus is about 2 miles up Charlie Hill Road, which is right off of Route 9. You can put it into your GPS and find it, but it's 2 miles in. So when you get there, you're in the woods. But it's a charming facility. Have you thought it with the capital campaign? And I'm sure you have, but how are you going to maintain the history and the beauty and the charm of the original buildings while you're actually improving them?
Well, the Oscar Seeger Theater is not going anywhere. There are many of us that cut our teeth in that building, and we are in love with that building. And we actually looked at first trying to just renovate that, but it is so old, and we basically have to rebuild the thing. So I would say that the architects that have done this have really done a great job. So the Shane's Rehearsal Studio is one of the newer we built in 2003 to 2004. So right as you drive down a hill into the campus, the dining hall is going to be just to the left of that. And it's also going to have an Adirondack look, Adirondack flair that sort of gives credence to the past. And the theater is going to be incredibly modern to look completely toward the future. But the theater has lots of glass in it. It's going to be taking the outdoors inside. You'll be able to stand on the second balcony and look out a glass wall and see Thurman Pond. So the architects have really done a great job of bringing the outside in. So we want it to be very modern, and we know we want every bell and whistle in there, from the stage house to sound to everything. But we also want to acknowledge that we live in a very beautiful place, and that is all part of it. We don't want a giant structure that's sticking up in the middle. So the theater is actually down the hill, so it doesn't go up. Even though we have fly spaces and a lot of really great things that we need, it still is going to meld in very well with the surroundings.
That's awesome.
Darren, for someone who thinks opera isn't for them, and sometimes I might actually fall into that category, what would you say to them? How would you explain how would you translate the beauty of where you're performing and what you're performing so that you would say, yeah, I'd check that out.
And who's performing too?
Yeah, we could ask that a lot, and there's probably a million different answers. I just, a lot of people said, well, I went to an opera and I didn't like it, so I'm never going to go back again. Well, we don't do a movie that way. We don't go to movies and say, well, I'm never going to go see another movie because I saw Turkey.
Good point.
And that's part of the reason why Opera Shots was born. Try it. It's a sip. It's just a little taste. But I really think that if you just go and give yourself to that beautiful music, and I think even my dad, it was a foreign language opera that finally got him. He kept going to operas in English, and he was struggling so hard to figure out. And once he just let that beautiful music of Mozart wash over him, he was sold for the rest of his life. They're incredible stories. Also, I would say opera is the ultimate art form. It has symphonic music, it has singing, it has acting, sometimes it has dialogue. And these singers are so skilled that they have to be able to do all those things to be successful. But basically, there's a reason it's been around for hundreds of years. It is the most amazing, beautiful art form. And I would say, just try it a couple of times. That's why we do so many different genres and different things. So you do have a way to sort of figure out what you like. As you know, I'm very passionate about it. I have spent my whole life in opera. And I would just say, try it. You might just really find something that you love.
The other thing too is with opera, it's one of the few art forms or things in life where you spend minutes feeling one emotion. There might be an aria that's 15 minutes long and it's all about someone's happiness. There's such a rare occasion in your life that you spend 15 minutes thinking about being happy or the ways that you can be happy. And not only do you get to see that, but you get to witness it. And you get to witness all of this play out on stage. And one of those lucky pieces to being in a live audience, not being on stage, not being a part of the art, but experiencing from the audience seat, is that actor up there is doing everything they can to make sure you feel an emotion. It's not about their experience. Their experience is to entertain this amazing audience and tell this beautiful story. But as an audience member, when you get to come to an opera and understand how beautiful happiness can be for 15 minutes is just otherworldly. And I truly can't think of many other occasions that can happen in your life.
That's so wonderful. I feel like, okay, we can't go anywhere. That sort of seals the deal for this episode. That's great. I do, though, before we set you loose into the wild, we love to ask all of our guests about their favorite spot or hidden gem in the Adirondacks. And in fact, the first time I got introduced to Darren was because our guest on Schroon Lake Department Store mentioned Seagle Festival as her hidden gem. So I would love to hear both Josh and Darren's answer. And as Darren knows, it can be anything. It can be a restaurant or a favorite trail, a museum, a store, whatever sort of floats your boat. You just can't say Seagle Festival.
Okay. Well, I'll go first. I've already given a shout out to New Vita Preserve, which I'm in love with, but I really like all these little historical societies around the North Country, and they're just tiny little wonderful snippets of a town. I love ours. It's here in Schroon Lake, but I want to give a special shout out now to the Bolton Landing Historical Society. They are running again. They have this wonderful exhibit called Visit Lake George. And they did it last summer. It was so spectacular. They're doing it again this year. And it's that period in the 50s and 60s where the Adirondacks really was opening up to families, and families were coming up. And it's so interesting to see Lake George then and through postcards and pictures and things. And I just found it so incredible. My friend Lisa Hall is the president of the society and curated that exhibit. And it's just wonderful. And it's another one of those things that you can just go to Bolton Landing and have lunch and pop by there for an hour and a half and have a great afternoon.
Yeah, there's so many. I like to call them pocket museums. And I know I've said this before in the podcast, but the North Star Underground Railroad Museum in Keysville or Ausable, right next to Ausable Chasm is amazing. The Courthouse Gallery is a really cool little spot right in Lake George Village.
Yeah.
Josh, how about you?
I was conflicted. I saw this question and I'm like, okay, so I have two. One, I love going to SUNY Plattsburgh to see the Rockwell Kent collection. I love woodblock prints, and it's just such a delightful little hidden gem up there if you don't quite know about it. And I also love to hike, and one that I'll do quite frequently in the summers, especially after a very long week, is to get up to Moonshine and just have that stunning view. I love to take the Ranger Trail because it gives me a quick jaunt up and helps me get back to campus to do whatever we have to do that day. But it's just one of those breathtaking moments to remind yourself it's right here in our backyard.
That's great. I love both of those. Steve is a SUNY Plattsburgh alum, so I'm sure that really resonated with him too.
I went up Moonshine when there still was a ranger up there.
Wow.
That's how I discovered the Ranger Trail. I said, wait a minute, there's an easier way to get up here?
I'm going off script a little bit here, guys, and we don't need to, you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, because some people are sensitive to this. Do you guys have a ghost?
No, but we do have a bat sometimes.
Vampires, then?
But they help take care of critters, so we love them.
There are some people that say we do, but I don't think we do.
You know, so many of the people that we talk to actually don't mind talking about the paranormal activity like Rick did at New Vita.
Yeah, I know. I'm stunned when people I've listened to all those podcasts that you've done with that group.
It's amazing how often it comes up.
Yeah, it does come up. And it's amazing when I look at our downloads, how many people really like the ghost stories. And in fact, we're having the Adirondack Park Paranormal Society, APPS. We're talking to them in our next episode. So stay tuned. We're going to do a little true crime and ghost stories. So, well, this has been, as always, so wonderful. I love everything you're doing at Seagle. I think Steve would agree. This enriches our community so much with these world-class artists, emerging voices, and now this really great, bold vision for year-round impact. Let's just remind again, individual tickets go on sale April 1st. And give your website URL one more time, please.
Yes, it's Seagle, SEAGLE, festival.org.
Darren, great to reconnect. Josh, so nice to meet you. And I hope to see you this summer at a performance or two.
We hope to see you as well. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks. It's so amazing to hear that the Seagle Festival has been shaping talent for more than 100 years. It's not just preserving tradition, though. It's also expanding what's possible up there. It's really an incredible story.
111 years. Yeah.
And listener, in the next coming weeks, we'll be having more episodes like this to give you a preview of what's happening this summer in the Adirondacks. So if you aren't already subscribed, please go to wherever you get your favorite podcasts, your favorite podcast platform, and subscribe. And if you like what you heard, please rate and review us. That really helps the algorithm and for other people to find out more about the Adirondacks. And as always, feel free to visit our website, adktaste.com, for news, events, and our handpicked recommendations for where to eat, shop, stay, and experience while you're in the Adirondacks.
Yes, and your questions and comments you can send to info@adktaste.com. And we'd love to hear them.
We love to hear them.
Gets all the bad ones. I get the good ones. So
there actually aren't that many bad ones. There's some constructive ones, I would say. But lately, I've been inundated with messages from folks who really enjoy this. So I think we're doing something good, Steve.
we try.
We try. All right. Until next time, support the arts, explore the Adirondacks, and maybe we'll see you at the theater.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.